Thank you, Ting Fang. Can you hear me, Ting Fang? All right. So thank you, Ting Fang. Thank you, Darren, Joshua. Okay, great. Angela, who is the UKSSC admin, says we can hear. So I'll carry on. We had a little bit of a glitch earlier on because I think the link was different, and I'm not really used to Hopin, but I thought it was very good because we are embracing the theme of embracing uncertainty. It's a real honor to be here, and I thought I have a speech in front of me, but I thought I will go a little bit off speech because I had planned to have a virtual background at the back to cover my room, but you have to embrace uncertainty at all times. So, and that involves even if you don't have a green screen behind you. I thought it was quite useful to start with just sharing a little bit about where you guys are, maybe, and then also reflect upon my own experience. But before that, I wanted to thank both the UKSSC. We have an incredible array of panelists. I know in panel one, where you're going to be talking about the road less traveled, we have Karina from Aware, Leighton from the British Council, and Patrick from the National Arts Council. And then later, you have another panel, which is Going Virtual, Going Global. And you'll have Gim from Google, Hannah from FTI Consulting, Sisi from HTX. I thought that was a really quite diverse array of speakers. But then the UKSSC went ahead a step further, and you've invited some incredible companies and organizations, some of which I'm pretty familiar with. You have organizations from Temasek, TikTok, Google, Advisory, and the like. So I think this is one of the better or one of the really, really quite important and exciting events. And so I just want to congratulate the UK SSC as well as your student leaders. I think this is a well put together event. So congratulations. Maybe I'll start with one thing. And I remember graduating or looking for a job about 12, 13 years ago from grad school. And I remember very much like this. I mean, you guys are coming out of one of the proverbial crisis of a generation. When I was graduating, it was another crisis. That was the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, and then 2010. And that was when the Lehman Brothers collapsed, and then the world was in the brink of financial ruin because of the financial sector. And then moving on to it, they said, basically from Wall Street to Main Street. And I remember being quite nervous. I remember wondering what kind of opportunities that I might have. But if I could leave you with one thing, that would be to hustle. And hustle, when I say hustle, I think that means that just try everything, anything. I was open to a variety of roles. I had a friend who ran a AIDS non-profit in Zimbabwe. It's called Forgotten Voices. So good friend's name is Ryan Keith. I had an opportunity with the National Volunteer Philanthropic Center with a mentor, a good friend of mine, Lawrence. And then, but then I also interviewed with a lot of different organizations. And I think today, with organizations that you have on offer, and those that are ahead of you and those that are not yet to be created, I think you have a great opportunity. So I remember interviewing with almost about 40, 50, maybe even 55 or so different organizations that span the private sector, non-profit sector, and the public sector. And I failed in most of them. I was either not a good fit, I didn't do well in the interview, mostly it's these two. But with every interview, I realized one thing, that even if you failed at the interview, you learn something from the interview. You learn whether you are a good fit for the organization. You learn whether the organization is a good fit with you and for you. You will also learn to interview better. So I remember the first few times, I prepare a lot during interviews, but I remember also that, sometimes I was just out of my depth, or it just wasn't tailor fit for me. It was just something I wasn't really passionate about. It wasn't something which I could see myself doing, or it was just something that was really beyond me at that particular stage in my career. So the first thing is just go ahead, go interview. I remember one of the because I was graduating off the Kennedy School, and so in the Kennedy School, many of them wanted to make a change in the world. And you can imagine at the height of the financial crisis, I think Ting Fang mentioned I was at Goldman. Why in the world would you join Goldman? Well, the story is that we had Hank Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary then, and Timothy Geithner, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve, New York Federal Reserve then, and they came to speak at the Kennedy School, and they were talking about how they were trying to deal with the financial crisis. I had a professor who told me, I did a course in capital market regulation then. And as I was interviewing with all of the different kinds of companies, private, non-profit, public sector, I just put in my resume to a whole host. I remember from Coca-Cola to Acumen Fund, to the UN, to Oxfam, to many different ones. And I remember putting one to Goldman, and I just left it there, dumped it into the application box. I didn't have a background in finance, and I just left it there. And I remember one evening, at 3:27 a.m., I still remember, one morning even, 3:27 a.m., I got an email. I couldn't sleep. The students, you don't sleep so early at 3:27 a.m. And I opened my mailbox and it says opportunities at GS. And I was like, what is GS? General Shoe Company or something like that. And it turned out to be Goldman Sachs. And I said, no, it was my wife beside me. I said, hey, I think Goldman Sachs somehow is interested in me. And so I looked at it and I just interviewed. There were 10 rounds of interviews. Finally got the offer. Then I went to my professors and I said, it seems a bit strange to go join this company when their role in the financial crisis. And he said, I think it's quite important to have a sense of the private sector, understand the goings on of the private sector, and ultimately, if you want to go back to the public sector or the social service sector, at least you take on some of these skill sets. So I did it. I spent about 5 years at Goldman in Hong Kong, Boston, Singapore. But I knew that I didn't want to stay that long. I knew that I wanted to maybe pick up some skills. And then the next one, again, that the first theme about hustle, it was then the tech sector started to grow. And there was a company, one of the recruiters said, hey, are you interested in joining this company? And I said, what company is it? And she said, well, it's one of the largest social networks in the world. And this was in 2013, 2014. And Facebook wasn't in that league, but growing. And so I took the jump. I joined. It was still small. I was one of the first few companies first few employees in Facebook in Singapore, trying to build up their APAC business. It was a very different theme from Goldman, but again, I was just trying. I knew tech was going up. I wanted to learn, and I thought that it was quite useful to move on to the tech sector, for example. Later on, I moved on to LinkedIn, and later on to government. But I just wanted to share this for the first point, which is to hustle. And I think hustling is quite important. Just try. You have a good variety of different business organizations here. Go give it a shot. You never know where it might take you, where and how it might take you. The second point I wanted to make, if it's helpful to all of you, because in this environment of hustling and in the spirit of embracing uncertainty, is that this is not new. The global financial crisis was a very uncertain time. You imagine then the world was literally also collapsing in that regard. But pre-COVID, you also face a few different big forces. The first is the US-China relations. The second is trade. You have supply chain issues. You have the rise in tech. You have environmental and climate change considerations. So these are already happening even before COVID. But after COVID, you have obviously a huge other range of challenges. So continue to hustle, continue to see when you meet some of these companies or these organizations, learn, try, put in your resume, interview. The second thing after hustle then is I wanted to share is on heart. And and you will get a sense of where you want to go. I mean, I absolutely love the speed, the dynamism of the private sector. I love challenging myself. You're always a couple of steps behind, trying to get a couple of steps in front of the market, in front of the curve. I enjoy the hustle bustle of the private sector, but my heart was always on, whether I can make a social impact, and that's why in the past I joined organizations like Oxfam. I was on the ground in the social sector, very much. But find out where your heart is. If your heart is, in effect, something where you really want to do a lot of deals and businesses, then that's where you are. That's what you were created to do. That's where your inklings are, your instincts are. For me personally, my heart really is with, and I spent about 15, 16 years on and off in Chinatown with a mentor of mine, serving vulnerable families and seniors in Kreta Ayer and Kinseng. So that was always my where I found my heart lies. My heart also laid a lot with Singapore. So everywhere else in the world, whether I be in Hong Kong or Boston, New York, San Fran, Sydney, anywhere else in the world, I always thought back of home, of Singapore. And what can I do to help Singapore? What can I do to maybe eventually come home? And even when I was at the UN, I was always, somehow, I was wearing a UN badge, but I was advocating for Singapore. I couldn't help it. Even when I was at Goldman or Facebook or LinkedIn, where it was appropriate, I was advocating for Singapore. Of course, you have to put on a very objective lens and where you make your investments. But, I found myself, if this is helpful to Singapore, what would be useful? What can I bring more investments into Singapore? All things being equal, do all the due diligence. Can I come home? Can I make an impact? And that was where, my heart was, and it pulled me towards that. Even though, I was like many of you, thousands of miles away. And why? Why was I so passionate about my country? Well, we are not by any means perfect. In fact, COVID has shown up a lot of different ways in which we can improve further. But I'm always thankful because even though we are small, we proverbially punch above our weight. Even in, when I was in either in Boston or in these different companies, then your reputation as a Singaporean student, your reputation as a Singaporean professional, you have a premium, and the premium is, to use this through the generations, it's painstakingly built by your fellow students that have come before you. And I always found that there's a premium that employers always attach to Singaporean students. Of course, you don't screw up while you're doing that. But it always helped. I always found that when I was overseas, I was very proud to represent Singapore, even as a student or a professional. And this crisis has shown me that I think we have a lot to be proud of. I mean, there's much that we have yet to do and much that we can do for the COVID crisis. But if I were to just say one last thing about home after hustle and after heart, is for many of you, please go as the second panel would say, go virtual, go global, go and experience what you have in the UK, in Europe, in the US. There you still will be able to travel, albeit you will be subject to some quarantines here and there. But go out there, go learn. But if I could just make an appeal for the Singaporeans online, if your heart belongs home, would you please, find a way home, find a way to come back, find a way to build this this country. Like, it's only one country, right, and a very small one. So I just wanted to just thank you guys. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Darren and Ting Fang, for inviting me to open this. Very, very much excited to listen to the panels, and one day very much also excited to welcome you all you students back home to serve and to build our country. Thank you.